just to let people know that the meeting is being recorded as well. So if anyone, that's really for the purposes of getting an accurate representation of what people say, and detailed notes and transcriptions will be held by Kilkenny County Council and Carlow County Council, and all issues will be included as part of the consultation. But if anybody has an issue with the recording of the meeting, they can raise that issue with Naomi Scully there, and we would ask that you do that just through the private message meeting chat at the start, or sorry, at the side of your screen.
I'm joining the meeting, Francis Logan. Where? I don't see it.
Sorry, say Francis. Okay.
Francis Logan, yeah.
Hi, Francis. Yeah.
You're in
So perhaps we record that on the attendance. How are we doing, Naomi, numbers wise?
Sorry.
How are we numbers?
We've just reached 30.
Okay. Okay, Nicholas, I suppose we give it about another minute and then we kick off.
Yes, that's fair enough.
Okay.
Can you hear me there, John? Councillor Willie Quinn?
Oh, I can. How are you, Willie? How are things?
Not bad at all, and yourself?
I sure can't complain. No sport for the foreseeable.
No, it's not good, but sure, look, we're in different times, aren't we?
We are, absolutely.
No, so.
Absolutely. Well, look, I suppose we can get started now, folks. For those of you who missed my introduction of myself earlier on, my name is John Purcell. And by day, I'm the Chief Executive of KCLR, the local radio station for Kilkenny and Carlow. I also present a business show each Saturday morning on the station between 9 and 10. But this evening, I've been asked by Carlow and Kilkenny County Councils to act as MC for this event. And so it's my role, I suppose, to be the master of ceremonies and just to try and keep things moving along in this strange environment. I think this is probably a bit of a first for a wide range of reasons, this event, in as much as it's a joint event hosted by Carlow and Kilkenny County Councils covering Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch. And as such, I believe it's the first joint public consultation event on the area, as far as I know anyway. But equally, it is part of the way we are all joined remotely on our computer screens at the times, and I think it's an unprecedented type of event. I think we've well over 30 people, probably going for 40 people now online. And so could I just ask everybody to mute your microphone unless you have a speaking part at the moment, or I think, Naomi, you can perhaps mute everybody if you want to do that, and I'll keep talking. But this is all part, and it will be outlined in more detail, but it's all part of, while we're in these very, very difficult COVID times, our future, it seems, is just mapped out in the next set of COVID statistics, and we're all operating on a very short time frame. But planning for, just unmute myself. Planning for the future is continuing nonetheless, and this is all part of that process. Normally we'd be gathered in a hall, but here we are this evening. So the format is pretty much going to be the same. We're going to try and replicate it as much as possible. You will hear 4 presentations. Nicholas Lowe, who's Kilkenny County Council, who's a senior executive planner in the planning department. Anita Sweeney, who's a senior planner with Carlow County Council. Emer Slattery, who's a project manager for the flood relief scheme with Kilkenny County Council, and Frank Stafford, who's the acting senior engineer with the Environment and Park section in Kilkenny County Council. So they will individually give some presentations. We would hope that those presentations would be over in about 30 to 40 minutes, perhaps. We will ask you to hold questions, verbal questions, to the end of the presentations. You can, if you wish, type in questions in the comment box at the side, and we will try and get around to those at the end. If in the event that there are so many questions that we're unable to deal with all the questions this evening, the councils have undertaken to respond to all the issues raised by people. Once we get to the, and I'll reiterate this later on, but once we get to the to the questions and observations part of the meeting, as I can't actually see everybody, we've so many people, like they're not all fit on the one screen, but people can use the hand icon, which is just towards the right-hand side of your screen, to just raise your hand. And if people raise your hands, I will note who wishes to speak, and I will then come to you. So for any, I know we've a number of recent arrivals to the meeting, so can I just ask our most recent arrivals to mute their microphones, which you can do by pressing the microphone icon in the top right-hand corner of your screen there. So I think without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Nicholas Lowe, who's Senior Executive Planner with Kilkenny County Council, along with his colleague from Carlow County Council, Anita Sweeney, are going to give you some background, some context, and explain the whole process to you. So Nicholas, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much, John. Good evening, everyone. I suppose, as John said, it's a first for us. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen with you. And I have a short presentation. Sorry, I've been locked out again. I have a short presentation. I hope everybody can see it. So I'm just going to maximize my screen. Okay, so welcome to our draft webinar on the draft plan. Firstly, I'm just going to start by saying what a local area plan is, why we did the plan. It's a public statement of planning policies, which is prepared in consultation with the local community. It will set out the strategy for proper planning and sustainable development of Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch as a joint approach between the two local authorities. So it is a coordinated plan in that regard. And it will also form the basis for funding applications in future, which I think has become fairly important in these days. There's a lot of money coming down from national, and they want to know how to and where to spend it. So this plan will indicate that. So you will all remember we had a pre-draft public consultation in November 2019. Now we had the issues paper on display from the 16th of October till the 22nd of November 2019. And then I suppose just when we started with the draft, COVID set in and everything was set back. And people wondered probably what happened to the plan and why it took so long to prepare the draft. We were trying to overcome the restrictions of COVID, but eventually that has happened now, and we have published the draft. And in the pre-draft public consultation process, we invited submissions. We received 9 submissions. And the issues that were raised included, the need for economic development in the towns, the need to develop tourism, educational requirements. Dushka College made a submission. Submissions on the zoning of land, public realm improvements, infrastructure requirements, improved pedestrian accessibility, especially between the two settlements, the provision of car parking in the town centre, and then the protection of the natural and the built heritage. So in terms of the draft plan, as I already said, it was informed by the pre-draft submissions received. We also consulted with all the stakeholders, the statutory stakeholders that we're obliged to consult with, the National Department, the EPA, etc. So the draft plan comprises of a written statement with policies and objectives, a land use zoning map, a Natura impact statement, which is a statement which considers the impact of all the proposals on the River Barrow Special Area of Conservation. Strategic environmental assessment, that's looking a bit wider at all the environmental issues and the potential impacts of the plan. We did a strategic flood risk assessment to ensure that we don't expose any future developments to flooding. And then we also did an infrastructure assessment. Now, an infrastructure assessment that's required fairly recently, and it is when we zone lands, we have to make sure that that land is, to the best of our ability, serviceable within the lifetime of the plan. So the strategic objectives of the plan is to promote the role of Graiguenamanagh as a district town. That's in terms of the Kilkenny County Plan. We have 5 district towns: Callan, Thomastown, and Graiguenamanagh, Castlecomer, and then the Ferrybank area. To promote the role of Tinnahinch as a smaller town and village in terms of the Carlow Plan. The promotion of heritage and tourism. You all know that Graiguenamanagh has a significant tourist element, and we need to promote and protect that. Then compact growth. In terms of the national planning framework, compact growth is the new key word for all developments, trying to keep development as tight as possible, and then also strengthening the links between the 2 settlements. To enhance the vitality and vibrancy of Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch town centres, sustainable modes of travel, and to encourage economic growth and job creation, and then to improve and create a livable and a good quality of life for the residents. So in terms of the status quo, you will see here that the census from to 2016 indicated that both Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch has had a slight decrease in population. It's not significant, but there were increases from 2006 to 11, which then slightly declined. And so we are trying to see how we can address this issue. It is one of the key issues, and to try and reverse this population decline. Now, the projected growth that we're planning for 2027, which is I suppose the end date of this particular plan, is that we anticipate that Graiguenamanagh would have 1,666 people, which is about 277 additional persons, and Tinnahinch about 355 additional people that we had to plan for, which is about 20 residential units. And then over and above those, we are also going to make provision for service sites in terms of Objective 18B of the National Planning Framework, where the national plan requires us for each of these plans and even in the county plan to look at villages and towns and to provide service sites in the vicinity of the town for that can be serviced during the lifetime of the plan, to provide for people that want to maybe build their own house within the settlement. Now, the focus of the plan is regeneration of the town centre, the reuse of vacant buildings. We know that there are some tenancy issues in Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch. Those the plan cannot necessarily address, but we can allow for the reuse of these buildings, and that is for planning policy to be as flexible as possible, and to try and address the dereliction. Sensitive redevelopment and infill will be a focus, improving the public realm, creating a vibrant and viable settlement, and then, as I said earlier, compact growth, supporting delivery of residential, employment and retail and other services, and keeping it as tight as possible. Residential development, there's a requirement for 30% of all new development to be within the the existing footprint of the town, and then also future economic growth. And we have a town center first policy to ensure that you don't have too many outlier developments. Then also we have provided a site for the secondary school next to the new fire station, and that was at their request. The focus of the plan will be to maximize tourism and the food economy opportunities, and to provide for overnight stays. We know that tourism in Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch are mostly day visitors, and for people to, I suppose, increase their spend, they will need improved facilities to cater for overnight stays. And I suppose the whole tourism product should be geared towards that. Frank will speak a bit later on the tourism study that was done. This plan supports that tourism study, and there are a few proposals from that plan which is supported by this plan, from the tourism plan. The zoning of lands to accommodate employment, and then also the plan supports incubation spaces, hot desking, startup businesses, etc. The plan can't necessarily provide all of that, but it will be supportive of those kind of initiatives where funding is available. The provision of pedestrian and cycling infrastructure and the improvement of links across the river Barrow between Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch. As you all know, we have only the George Semple Bridge at the moment, which is a protected structure. There are limitations as to what we can do with that bridge. We know that there was a request during the draft where people wanted better pedestrian crossing points, etc., and a footpath, etc. So we're looking at opportunities for that. This local area plan requires that a mobility management plan be undertaken in the near future, which will look at all these links and what is actually viable and feasible on the ground. The improvements to footpaths, lighting, there are proposals for lighting on the quays, lighting across the bridge, and then obviously in terms of providing water and wastewater for development, for new housing developments, the plan also supports that. We know that just before I step off of that, we know that there are some limitations, seasonal limitations on water provision, and we are in consultation with Irish Water to try and address those issues at the moment. Telecommunications, broadband, and renewable technologies all being supported. Emer Slattery will talk about the flood relief works that the plan also considers. I know they're only in their initial stages, but we did a flood risk assessment as part of this plan, so we had to reconsider some of the zonings because they are potentially at risk, and we are precluded from zoning lands that are in the flood zone. In terms of built and natural heritage, the protection and promotion of the natural environment. I said already earlier that there is a special area of conservation, which is the River Barrow. Now that includes the Dushk as well. So there is an exclusion area around the river, or rather not exclusion, but an area which is very sensitive. And any development that takes place there will have to have regard to those conservation objectives and prove that it does not negatively impact on them. To preserve the historic character of Graiguenamanagh, which is one of its main attractions, we have the architectural conservation area, and we also have protected structures. Now, the protected structures are protected by virtue of being on the record, but over and above those, all new developments within the architectural conservation area will also have to be sensitive to the character of the town centre, and I will show you a map of that in a second. That is the architectural conservation area for Graiguenamanagh town. So any development within that will have to be sensitive whether or not it is a protected structure or not. And Then also just to indicate to you, the blue there is the special area of conservation, the River Barrow. You will see that part of the hub falls under that. And obviously, if there are any bridges, etc., to be constructed across the river, they will potentially impact on the special area of conservation, and therefore a Natura impact statement will have to be done for those. So the viability of those are still at question, and the potential of, but mostly because of the potential for impact on the special area of conservation. Now, in terms of housing, I have already mentioned that for Graiguenamanagh, for instance, we are proposing to increase the population to 1,666. In order to provide for that, we have zoned 6.8 hectares of land for residential, and which does not include a 2 hectare of zoning for low density residential, as I've said, under Objective 18B of the National Planning Framework for those service sites. They're over and above the 6.8 hectares. That potentially could deliver 137 houses for Graiguenamanagh and 20 low density houses, which we consider would be more than enough to provide for the anticipated growth of the town in the next 6 years. And then, of course, there will be infill sites within the settlement itself, which will create opportunities for increased densities and increased units to meet our 30% objective for 30% infill development within the footprint of the city, of the town. Just briefly, to show you the main changes that arose out of this plan. Number one, we removed some residential zoning next to the river due to flooding concerns. We have provided a new site for a school next to the fire station. I don't know if you can see my arrow there. And then we have also changed zoning to reflect current uses, which is community, including the fire station. We have provided for 2 master plan sites, and I will speak on one, and Anita will speak on the one on the Carlow side. Those master plan sites are both adjacent to the river, and one of the reasons that we considered them is that the tourism study has some proposals, but those proposals will have to be teased out further, and then they will have to be subject to an appropriate assessment, because they are potentially very close to the river and the special area of conservation. And then pedestrian and cycle improvements. You will see the dotted lines throughout the settlement there. Those are also supported in the tourism study. And then here on the bottom left-hand side is a site for proposed low-density residential, very accessible within the town envelope. But we think that is the most appropriate land available at present. Just to give a quick overview of the proposals for the hub. As I've said, the hub will require a master plan for future development. We know that there are some uses over the summertime, camper vans, etc., being used or being stationed there, which seems to work very well. There are other potential uses. So there's potential for a use from links from Brandondale House through to the town centre, and maybe even from other built-up areas. And so increased connectivity with the River Barrow. There's a proposal in the tourism study for a bridge to be a pedestrian bridge to cross over from the hub onto the lock area. The identification of opportunities for tourist attractions and recreational amenities that might be located within the site. And an events venue would be considered there, and then additional pedestrian and cycle links. So that's it from the Kilkenny side. I'm now going to hand over to Anita Sweeney from Carlow to talk to you briefly about the proposals for Tinnahinch.
Okay, Nicholas, thanks very much. I hope everybody can hear me, and thanks very much to everybody for logging on this evening. Nicholas, I might ask you just to move on to the next slide if you don't mind. I'll just go through some of the issues, I suppose, in relation to Tinnahinch specifically. A lot of the policies and objectives that Nicholas has gone through apply equally in the Tinnahinch area, so they're across the board in terms of the both functional areas for both local authority areas. So in terms, I suppose, of Tinnahinch, we're very conscious, I suppose, that it's a smaller population, but an aging population, and really in terms of creating sustainable communities, really it is about providing additional housing for all tenures and trying to get new families and new amenities and employment opportunities into the town. So in terms of Tinnahinch itself, we're looking at, I suppose, 18 private housing units over the period of the plan, and 7 social housing units within the plan area in Tinnahinch area. So under this plan, we have 3.45 hectares of land proposed for zoning for residential purposes. And similar to the Graiguenamanagh side of the settlement, we also have provided for low density residential development or service sites potentially within Tinnahinch as well, to provide the option for people who want to build their own home within the settlement, and provide an option and opportunity to an alternative to, I suppose, building outside the settlement on a bigger site. So we have overall, I suppose, potential for 40 number residential units within the zoned area, but we also equally have opportunities for the residential development within existing residential and a mixed use zoning. So Nicholas, you might move on to the next one, please. So in terms of Tinnahinch, just I suppose to touch on a few things really, as a guide toward creating more sustainable communities. As Nicholas mentioned, tourism development and the leader study really highlighted the importance of and the potential for tourism within Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch, which is really important in terms of the future development of Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch. So in terms of the objective, there is an objective to support tourism development on a proposed mixed-use land zoning in Tinnahinch, and I'll go back and illustrate that on the map in a moment. And also, as Nicholas has mentioned, there's also equally, I suppose, in complementary to the Graiguenamanagh Riverside Park, there's also proposals in relation to land along the river on the Tinnahinch side in terms of the future development of that area. So in terms of, Nicholas, if you don't mind moving on to the next one. So in terms of the master plan area, this is a piece of land that's beside the River Barrow. It joins the special area conservation that Nicholas mentioned earlier on, and it's within the flood zone area associated with the River Barrow. As Nicholas mentioned, some of these lands have changed zonings on foot of considerations that we would have taken into account, and particularly in this context, these lands are subject to flooding and wouldn't pass a justification test for other land uses that could be proposed. So it's very much less vulnerable land uses to the risk of flooding. So in terms of the objectives for this particular area, it is to create a high quality visitor amenity space with new parkland, play space, infrastructure, sports and utilities, parking and mooring facilities. And as Nicholas mentioned also, in terms of developing the linkages, the pathways and the cycleways to the existing amenity walkways and along the Barrow River, and really improving the public realm and accessibility for the public as well in relation to this area. So in terms of the other focuses for Tinnahinch, the provision of pedestrian and cycling infrastructure with improved connectivity between Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch. So there is a pedestrian bridge proposed as part of the plan, and also, as Nicholas mentioned, the George Semple Bridge, and the need to look at, I suppose, whole mobility issues between the two settlements. I suppose we're very conscious in terms of Tinnahinch that a lot of the services, community facilities, etc., are provided in Graiguenamanagh, and there is a high flow of traffic between the Tinnahinch and Graiguenamanagh, and to facilitate that in a safe manner, we do need to look at, I suppose, the whole mobility piece between the two settlements. We also, I suppose, have a focus on promoting access to key heritage sites on the Tinnahinch side, I suppose, including Tinnahinch Castle and also St. Michael's Well. We're also, I suppose, providing for community services in the settlement, and in particular, I suppose, the expansion of the cemetery in Tinnahinch. And I suppose in parallel with that, we feel, I suppose, that there is opportunities in relation to employment, enterprise and employment, and there's, you know, over 4 hectares of land zoned for enterprise and employment, but equally there are other areas that are zoned for mixed use that could also accommodate development. Nicholas, I'll just go back to the last zoning map for Tinnahinch. I think it's just up above, just to illustrate, I suppose, the main changes that have been proposed from this plan from the previous plan. So the area that's identified A there is for the River Park land area, and that previously was zoned town centre site, and that is proposed for open space, amenity, stroke biodiversity in the context of this new plan. The B area there, which is in yellow, is identified for a mixed use site. Now that would have previously been agriculture in the last plan, but we feel that there's significant opportunity in relation to this piece of land, particularly with a specific objective to support tourism type development within this area, including tourism, accommodation, etc. There's C and D are just small changes to reflect developments that are already on those particular sites, so they're zoned for mixed use. E recognises the employment use in relation to the Glanbia site. The F is an extension to facilitate the graveyard extension, and G is an extension to the open space biodiversity zone and running along the river, which will hopefully at some stage potentially provide for connectivity to the St. Michael's Well. So just in terms, I suppose, the combined map then brings together the land use zonings that Nicholas went through in relation to Graiguenamanagh and the zoning in relation to Tinnahinch. So it kind of gives you the comprehensive overview of the land use zonings that are proposed. It also identifies on that map, I suppose, pedestrian and cycle connectivity that can be achieved. And also there is a number of specific objectives identified on that map in relation to the master plan and areas and objectives in relation to mobility management. So I suppose just in terms of moving on, in terms of the process after this, Nicholas, if you can move on to the next one, please. Yeah, so where we are in terms of the stages for the plan is the draft plan is currently on public display. That runs now until the 25th of January. So anybody who wants to make a submission in relation to the process must do it by 5 p.m. on the 25th to either Kilkenny County Council or Carlow County Council. Following on from that, we will then be preparing a Chief Executive's report, which will be presented to the elected members of both local authorities, so to both Kilkenny County Council and to Carlow County Council. And the elected members within those areas will deal with the decisions relating specifically to their functional area. And then following that, if there are changes to the plan at that stage, there will be another period of public consultation, which will go out to the members again, or to the public, and the public can make further submissions, and it goes into another process then in terms of the Chief Executive's report. So we're at an early stage in the process in terms of trying to get people engaged in this process, and if there's any issues that people would like to bring forward, we would require people to do that formally through the process. So in terms of the next slide, Nicholas, please. So just in terms of the submissions, how the submissions can be made, the plan is currently available online on both local authorities' public consultation platform. So in Kilkenny, it's consult.kilkenny.ie, and in Carlow, it's consult.carlow.ie. Now, the plans are available in the County Council offices. Obviously, with COVID, we're not really encouraging too many people in terms of access in the offices. So if anybody has a specific query or wants particular parts of the plan, we certainly can email them out, or we can post them out if people want them. Obviously, if people really do need to come in, we can make an appointment to facilitate that if people want to come in. And then I suppose just moving on in terms of the process submissions, there is a facility online that you can use just to register and make your submission online to both local authorities or separately, or you can do it by email to a dedicated email address there, ourplan@kilkennycoco.ie, or in Carlow it's jointlap@carlowcoco.ie, or you can make it in writing. So you can write to the senior planner in Kilkenny or the senior planner in Carlow County Council, and your submission, once it's made, will be considered as part of the process, and there will be a response of the chief executive to the issues raised in your submission. So we just, I suppose, would like to encourage people to engage in the process and to make your submission, and it will be considered as part of the process, and we look forward to engaging with the public over the period. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Anita. That was Anita, who's the senior planner from Carlow County Council. Now, Anita, your audio dropped once or twice during that, so I just want to invite people, if they've missed any significant bits or if there was something that you didn't hear, I'll just give people an opportunity to ask a question on anything specific. I'm not throwing it open to questions at this stage, but just ask if anybody has any particular issues with anything they didn't hear, because we could ask Anita to repeat herself. No, I'm not seeing anybody with anything like that. Okay, well, you would have heard floods been mentioned there, and the implications and the impact of potential flooding. So Emer Slattery now is the project manager on the flood relief scheme, and she's going to talk to us. Over to you, Emer. If you want to unmute yourself there, Emer, perhaps.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, can you see that presentation there in front of you at the moment?
Yeah, that's visible to me anyway. Everyone else see it okay? Yeah, just maybe wave. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah. Thank you, Miriam.
Thanks, John, and good evening, everybody. I'd just like to introduce myself to start out. Emer Slattery is my name. I'm the project manager for Kilkenny County Council on the flood relief scheme. This project is in collaboration with Carlow County Council and our funding authority, the OPW. Tonight, I'll just give you a quick overview and an update on the status of the flood relief scheme. So everyone will remember this graphic, two photographs here from Storm Frank back in December 2015 and early January 2016. Where devastating effects of flood damage was evident. The photographic on the left is of the quay in Graiguenamanagh under considerable flood, and the photograph on the right was taken in early January of 2016 of Lower Main Street with the junction with High Street, and the amount of water on the street is quite evident, and the damage of such. In 2018, funding was approved by the OPW for a flood relief scheme. This was part of a €1 billion investment nationally by government. This scheme, the Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch, was allocated 9.6 million out of that 1 billion national government fund. The image on the screen highlights the study area for the scheme. The red line denotes the actual boundary proposed for the scheme, and you can visibly see where Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch sit within that red line. The River Barrow and the River Dush and its tributaries can be seen also on this photograph. The study area will include any areas that require hydrological or environmental assessment as part of the scheme. This map also aligns considerably with the CFRAMS programme, which is the baseline for what this project is set from. So the time frame for the project. So the project is to be delivered over 5 stages. The first stage is stage 1, which commenced in March 2020, which was the scheme development and the preliminary design, and that's due for completion by the end of this year. The preliminary design will then be brought into the second stage, which is the planning stage, and that's stage 2, which involves planning and the public exhibition, and that's due to be completed by Q3 of 2020. Following from the planning, it will move then into a detailed design for stage 3 and out to the open market for tender for contractors, and that's due to be completed by Q1 of 2023. Following the tender and the design, it will then move into a 2-year proposed construction phase, and that's stage 4 of the project, and that's due to be completed by Q1 of 2025. Then from completion of construction, it moves into stage 5, which will take over a year for a handover, and that's for the completion of works and certified of the works to ensure that the scheme is successful. So where are we? We're currently at stage 1, and the progress to date on stage 1 has been Kilkenny County Council appointed Byrne and partners as consultants to develop and implement a flood scheme back in March 2020. Following the appointment of consultants, one of the tasks of consultants was to develop a website, and this website went live in June of 2020. Following on from the website, a public consultation event was held, and unfortunately, due to COVID-19 restrictions, the traditional face-to-face meeting like what tonight would have been was unable to happen, so we had to move on to the online format, and the public consultation was held on consult.ie. To supplement the website and the consultation, it was decided to bring out a newsletter to all the residents and properties in Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch, and this newsletter drop was carried out in October of 2020. Some of the works then completed actually on the project itself. A topographical survey was completed in November 2020. We had multiple crews down on site taking surveys over the summer months. Environmental baseline surveys are ongoing in the scheme area. Hydrology and hydraulic design for both the Barrow and the Douche rivers is ongoing also. Stage 1 completion date, as previously said, is at the end of this year of 2021. So this is just a screen grab of the project website just for information, and that project website, as I've said, went live in June of 2020, and the address there is on www.floodinfo.ie. The purpose of the website is to be as a resource tool for the public, providing information and the latest project developments, and will be updated as the scheme progresses. So it's your go-to. If you're looking for any information currently on the flood relief scheme, the website is a good first point of call. This is the newsletter that was dropped to all the premises and properties and households in Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch in October. The purpose of the newsletter is to inform the public of the scheme and the progress on the scheme to date. The newsletter provided contact details for the project team, including Byrne, the consultants, and it opened up the forum for seeking for submissions and comments, and those submissions and comments are welcome at any stage on the project. And then just finally, just some contact details for ourselves. So Byrne are the consultants, and they can be got at gftrs@byrneluby.com, or for myself, Emer Slattery at kilkennycoco.ie. Thanks a million.
Thanks very much, Emer. Wow, those photos of Storm Frank really brought me back. That was some experience, and I was in Kilkenny City, but I remember Edward Hayden on KCLR at the time sending out reports as he stood in the middle of a torrent late one evening. So that comes very much to mind. We've just one more presentation before we open it to questions, and perhaps how we'll be taking questions is both through people who want to actually verbally put their questions, but you're also free to put some questions through the message function at the side. You'll see it, the speech bubble function just up towards the right of your screen. It's the icon that's about the sixth icon over between the show participants. So if anyone wants to put a question in, I'll try and field some of the questions, and we'll also throw the questions open to the virtual floor, I suppose, before we finish the meeting, and everybody can go off and bring your own teas and coffees at the end of it. Unfortunately, we'd normally have that in a hall somewhere. But we'll move on to the last presentation, which is by Frank Stafford, and Frank is Acting Senior Engineer in the Environment and Park section of Kilkenny County Council. Frank, over to you.
Thanks very much, John. And I'm a bit unfortunate coming on after Emer showing that Storm Frank slide, but sure, anyway, Graiguenamanagh. But I think Nicholas is going to try and share a drawing there that I sent earlier. But if you can't anyway, I'll just continue on. I'm going to give a short summary on the tourism recreational study mentioned by Nicholas and Anita and the potential funding streams that are required to deliver the objectives of the study. And I suppose if we could just take a step back. In the past, I suppose the town grew and thrived as a market town with significant employment generated with the manufacture, production and transportation of goods between Dublin and the southeast. And that was made possible by the navigation of the River Barrow. However, and unfortunately over the decades, employment opportunities have been on a downward trajectory. And I suppose in most recent times, efforts have been made to develop and promote the tourism attractions and amenities in the town, with particular emphasis on the River Barrow. As this is seen as, I suppose, a potential to return the town to its once vibrant self. And good progress has been made with the development of a number of water-based facilities, but there remains a real need to build on this progress and to develop additional offerings so as to position the town as a vibrant settlement and a significant tourism destination in the southeast. As Nicholas would have said earlier, we do want day trippers, but we really want people that will stay for a couple of nights and that will spend in the shops, the restaurants, the bars and accommodation. That will create opportunities for local people within the town and to attract inward and investment into the town. I know I'm somewhat biased. I put my hands up here. I'm from the town, but I do feel the town is a hidden gem. And I would say there's not many towns in the country that could match it in terms of its rich natural, built and cultural heritage. So I suppose just going back to 2006, there was a Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch development and economic study. That was a joint study undertaken by both local authorities. It identified the amenity potential of the town to stimulate economic growth, and to the delivery of same had been a key objective of the various local area plans in the intervening period on both sides of the river. So to advance this further, in 2017, key stakeholders, namely both local authorities, Kilkenny Leader Partnership, Waterways Ireland and the Carlow Enterprise Board, set up a steering group. And that steering group was charged with the development of a vision plan for the town with a particular focus on the riverbank area that would maximise the potential of the existing underutilised assets such as the outdoor activity hub at the time, the Tinnahinch Castle, the Upper Lock Keeper's House, the dry dock and undeveloped lands either side of the river. So the main objective of this plan was to set out a clear roadmap that would build on the existing tourism and outdoor activity offerings so as to create a sustainable tourism industry capable of increasing the inflow of tourists to realise the full economic potential for the area. And arising out of that, SLR consultants were engaged back in 2018 to prepare the Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch Tourism and Recreational Project Concept Study. And that was completed in 2019. And as Nicholas and Anita said, that draft plan, the draft local area plan takes consideration of this study. This study that we have provides a blueprint for the local and community development funding. The study identifies the potential linkages between the various tourism and recreation assets and amenities in the area, setting out a number of concepts to stimulate economic development and attract inward and private investment. So I suppose the key thing about this plan compared to the 2006 plan is that within the concept study there is a detailed action plan that sets out over 20 actions, and those actions will run up to 2026. I suppose these actions are required to make the proposal a reality. And some of the actions include, say, from the lower level actions would be brand development and marketing. That's quite obvious. Tourism product development around the town's historical heritage, such as Douche Abbey, and creating a craft story around Cushendale Woolen Mills Douche Glass, and put a greater emphasis on the promotion and branding around our annual festivals, such as the Town of Books, the Regatta, and the various walking and musical festivals in August. Medium level actions such as the Waterways College, that would be in the outdoor activity hub, that has great potential, and there is ongoing discussions with our counterparts up in the north and over in Scotland. So that would involve the ETB, Kilkenny Leader Partnership and the Barrow Valley Community Development Committee. The access road into the activity hub along with the camper van facilities was also included within the action plan, and good progress has been made over the last 6 months, I suppose, on that particular element of the outdoor activity hub, in that planning has been granted for the access road and the camper van facilities. A funding application has been lodged, and all the indications to date is that the funding, the outcome of that funding application will be successful. So we're hopeful there, and great credit must go to the Martin O'Brien and the Barrow Valley Community Development Group for all the great work they've done there. Other, I suppose, mid-level actions would include the amenity enhancements along the river bank, such as the Lairwood Boardwalk, which was just recently opened before Christmas. And then I suppose another one would be the excavation of the dry dock down off the dock road beside the bridge. And this, if this materialises, it'll tell a story of the built heritage of the town, and we'll be able to allow public access to that, all kind of, I suppose, increasing the offering of the area, of the riverbank area, and getting people to stay that bit longer because there's more things to do. At the larger level scale actions would include the flood relief scheme that Emer has spoken about, the Tinnahinch River Park that Anita addressed, and then there's the 2 new footbridges that would provide alternative links, I suppose, between the 2 urban settlements. Now, these wouldn't be specifically for your day-to-day uses. These are really to open up new areas. So, as Nicholas said, the one down at the Lock House may incorporate the Lock Gates, and it would be a shorter span into the outdoor activity hub. And that, by getting people into the outdoor activity hub, you could have access routes up to Douche Glass and further on into Cushion, Woollen Mills. And similarly down on Tinnahinch side, you're bringing people directly over from services on the Tinnahinch side over into the river area of the boat club, the rowing club, and the swimming areas there. And you're creating a loop that would link into Lairwood. So just with respect to the latter, we're in the process of engaging consultants to undertake a feasibility and design options reports for the 2 bridges. So as part of that brief, they will also look at the existing George Semple Bridge. Now, the latter will be very difficult given that it's a recorded monument of national importance. So any intervention to that bridge we'd have to ensure that it wouldn't detract from its iconic status. So as stated by Nicholas, a number of the projects contained within the action plan will require planning consent, and regarding the riverside projects, they will require an appropriate assessment given their proximity to the special area conservation, and they cannot negatively impact on the proposed flood relief scheme. But I suppose, as other speakers have alluded, the government policy really now recognises the potential for outdoor amenity spaces and activity destinations in regenerating the rural Irish economy. And we all know about the successes of the Wild Atlantic Way and even the Waterford Greenway and the positive impacts they have had on their local communities along the routes. So in this regard, the government, notwithstanding, I suppose, the economic implications arising out of COVID, it is making funding available to the local authorities, communities and other interested stakeholders under various capital programmes, such as the Outdoor Recreational Infrastructure Scheme. Lairwood was recently funded under that, and that can attract funding up to 0.5 million and with match funding coming from the local authority. There's the Urban and Rural Regeneration Development Programme, and there's the Town and Village Renewal Schemes, and so on. So there's a whole raft of different opportunities there, and I suppose, but there is only going to be a finite amount of funding which will be allocated, and I suppose this is based on a national competition, and applications are assessed on the quality of the projects put forward. So I think the creation of the Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch Tourism and Recreational Project Concept Study that is commissioned by multiple stakeholders that included adjoining local authorities really shows that we are serious about the tourism potential of the town. The fact that there is now a joint local area plan being developed by both local authorities, the first of its kind for Carlow and Kilkenny, which supports the tourism and recreational concept study, again demonstrates a shared vision and a real partnership approach, setting down policy and objectives that will underpin future planning applications and future funding applications. So all that I think is very positive, and it will really help us attracting the future funding required to deliver, I suppose, the objectives of both the concept study and the local area plan when it's adopted. So that's it, John. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, deliberate mistake. Thanks very much, Frank. That was Frank Stafford, acting senior engineer with the Environment and Park section from the County Council. That's the end of the presentations for this evening. So just to thank Nicholas, Anita and Emer, quite a broad range of material covered and an exciting range of developments in the pipeline. I must say, tourism and walks along the river bank and so on just have a very appealing feel about them at the moment, when we're all stuck within 5 kilometres of our homes for the foreseeable future. We're going to open it to questions now at this stage, and I'd just like to maybe have a quick thank you to the local public representatives and acknowledge those of who I can see here at the moment. We have Councillor Deirdre Cullen, Councillor Matt Doran, Councillor Peter Chap-Clear and Councillor Michael Doyle from Kilkenny County Council, and of course Councillor Willie Quinn from Carlow County Council. I hope I haven't omitted anybody there. We're going to get on to the questions, and a question did come in, and I suppose this would be Emer in the first instance, but it came from Dennis Logan, and Dennis asked, can the flood relief plan be expedited? 2026 is a long way away for property owners in the floodplain. Emer, I don't know if you can say anything about that. It looks like a pretty extensive time frame you've set out for.
Yes, John, while I appreciate totally where Dennis is coming from in terms of the delivery date of 2026, I suppose the end of construction will be envisaged for the end of 2025 with the handover. So the works themselves should be completed by 2025. But as you've alluded to, John, there's 5 stages to the process, and the level of work involved in each of those stages is time consuming, be it planning and EIARs and actually coming up with the design itself. So unfortunately, it's a 5-stage project that will take that period of time.
And of the 5, Emer, what step are you at the moment?
So we're currently in stage 1, the design of the project, to get the design into a planning phase. So it's to get the project itself up to design. So that's the end of 2021. And then hopefully in 2022, we'll be moving into the planning phase then. Okay.
I don't know, Dennis, if you want to say anything. I just looked up, it was exactly 5 years ago that Graiguenamanagh was underwater thanks to Storm Frank. And I suppose I was thinking 2026 seems so far in the distance, but it's actually just 5 years away as well at this stage. But I know that's not much consolation to people who are looking at the weather forecast with foreboding. Just a question on the process which came in from Jane O'Reilly, and I don't know who's the person to answer this, but will the plan go to the elected members of the full councils or to the elected members of the municipal districts? And I presume that refers to the local area plan, Jane, that you're talking about.
Yeah. John, I can answer, I suppose, for Carlow, and Nicholas will probably answer for Kilkenny. I suppose, with the form of local government. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the context of Carlow, we will be briefing the municipal district members, but the decision-making process takes place at full council in the context of Carlow County Council for the Tinnahinch plan. Nicholas, my comment on Kilkenny.
Yes, John, that's exactly the same for Kilkenny. The full council will adopt the plan. However, we will workshop and present to the municipal district before we take it to the full council.
Okay, thanks very much. And just to clarify, my understanding is that there's still a number of phases to go. So what results from this particular consultation phase, which I think continues until the 25th, will result in the production of a further report, which will then go back for further consultation with the public. Is that correct? Nicholas, yeah?
Correct, yes. What happens now is once we have all the submissions, we will do a chief executive's report. We will make a recommendation, then the chief executive will make a recommendation to the members. If there are any variations, those variations then will go out on display again before a final plan is made and adopted by the members.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anybody would like to ask a question. I have no more questions.
Councillor Clear has his name or his hand raised there.
Okay, Councillor Clear, yeah, if you'd like to, that's Councillor Peter Chap there.
Thanks very much, John, and thanks very much, Naomi. And first of all, can I just very briefly just compliment all of the presentations this evening. It was an hour really well spent, and you couldn't but be excited about the prospects for both Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch going forward. So I just wanted to pay tribute and thank all of the speakers tonight, and to encourage anybody on the call or in the wider public that if there are any additional submissions and observations, to make them before the 28th of January. But I have to say, the work that has gone into this stage and the plan that has been produced to this stage, it's incredible amount of work from everybody involved, and I just wanted to acknowledge that publicly this evening, and to thank yourself, John, as well for mediating. It's incredibly efficient. Some calls go on very long, but the amount of detail we've covered in the hour has been fantastic, so fair play to yourself as well. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Clare. That's great. Naomi, can you see anybody else raising a hand?
Miriam Cushion had her hand raised earlier before Emer's presentation. Miriam, if she'd like to say anything.
That was just, I think, John, it was just to acknowledge that there was something up on screen. But no, really enjoyed the session. Like from our side, from the Cushendale Woolen Mills, we're particularly keen on the tourism side and what we can contribute to that and get involved in. So anywhere that we can get involved in that, we'd be really enthusiastic about that. So yeah, it's good to see that on the agenda.
Thanks very much. Councillor Willie Quinn, I think you wanted to say something. Sorry, you had your hand raised.
Yes, John, thanks very much. And like Chapter, I just want to thank everyone there tonight as well for the reports and that. They were fantastic. Just a couple of issues that I'd like to ask. Do we have any idea as regards the old bridge that's there, that's so very important, that links the two areas? How often do we get an engineer's report on that as regards, because it's such a mainstay? If anything happens to that bridge, do we have to go round trip to get into Graiguenamanagh, for the people, say, of Tinnahinch and St Mullins? And it's such a very old bridge, and like I said, it's a protected structure and that as well. So, I mean, will there be a report done on that bridge as part of this development? And if this work, as was said earlier on, like about the, do we have to be very, very careful with anything work that has been done on it? So I'm just wondering, is there a need to put a kind of a line in the map, maybe for a future bridge down the line, that if this bridge doesn't concord with what we need this to do, as regards the amount of heavy vehicles that will be travelling over it on a daily basis? I mean, from the South Carlow area, I know a lot of traffic, and especially with the Aldi and the way Graiguenamanagh is heading there at the moment, I'd be kind of worried about that. And the other point I would be worried about, I suppose it's about 3 years ago now since I brought this up at the County Council meeting in Carlow regarding the pedestrian bridge for Graiguenamanagh. I'm kind of worried that the meeting there tonight seems to be suggesting that the bridges will be further down from the old bridge to link in with the hub and further up the river. If you're, and it was highlighted there tonight that a lot of the people at the Tinnahinch side will be of an elderly generation. I mean, if you're an elderly person going across the bridge, and the only bridges there at the moment is the one that the cars go over, which is absolutely lethal for pedestrians crossing, you won't travel down 100 yards either side to go across you still go across the old bridge. And if you're going to spend money on putting 2 new bridges in, I think at least one of them should be there in such a way that maybe there will be 20 or 30 yards either side of the bridge for elderly people to cross over, or pedestrians to cross over to the side. Like, going down the way and having to come back up doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Willie. Just 2 questions, both on bridges. I suppose the first one, I was looking at reeling in the years over the Christmas, and I saw the bridge been washed away in Leenan in Galway, which caused a diversion of something like 50 miles. So I don't know who in Kilkenny or Carlow County Council would like to take the question in relation to the solidity of it.
Yeah, John, I'll answer that there, John. I know that bridge really would be surveyed regularly by our bridge inspection engineer. So like structurally that bridge is sound. There's no issues with it. But I suppose you can't really interfere with it, given that it's a recorded monument of national importance. And again, even looking at putting a bridge even 20 or 30 meters either side of it, you're going to take from the views of it. Like it's one of those bridges that you can see, clearly from either downstream or upstream, and to put anything close to it is going to take from the look of the bridge. And I think we run into serious difficulty in terms of planning because of that. I suppose the function of the other bridges really is to open up new areas. They're not specifically to provide connectivity between Tinnahinch and Graiguenamanagh for just day-to-day usage. It's more opening up these areas for the development, for the tourism to develop and evolve, and they'll I suppose if you build it, they'll come, and it'll help those areas to grow and expand and attract the people into it. So their function is slightly different than, say, your typical bridge. But as part of the feasibility and option study for those two pedestrian bridges, the consultants are required to have a look at the George Semple Bridge to see what traffic calming measures can be put on it to make it safer for pedestrians and cyclists. Now, again, the scope is going to be limited in that we have traffic signals just beyond the bridge on the Graiguenamanagh side because of the cross-section of the road between the Abbey Hall and, say, Doran Super Value. So it would be very difficult to provide another set of traffic signals, but that'll all be assessed as part of the feasibility report that's going to come in shortly.
Okay, Frank, thanks for that. Willie, does that answer your question? It mightn't exactly be.
I mean, we don't seem to be taking into account here the health and safety issues that are there already on the bridge.
Somebody asked, Richard Bulger suggested that the existing bridge could be made safe with a footpath and traffic lights, surely. Frank, would that be open for consideration as part of this?
Yeah, John, that'll be looked at. But the difficulty, as I said there earlier, is that we have a set of traffic lights just beyond the bridge on the Graiguenamanagh side. And you would really be looking at probably stopping traffic up at the Abbey Street junction and on the Tinnahinch Road. So it'd be quite a distance, and you have a number of junctions in between. But that will all be assessed as part of this study that the consultants will be undertaking.
So Richard Bulger, in answer to your question, it will be looked at. And David Exley is saying the existing bridge needs resurfacing alongside the walls. Pedestrians have very rough ground, pipes, etc., to avoid, and they end up walking further out into the middle of the bridge and into danger. So obviously people feel, or some people feel, that that is an issue. But you're saying that will be looked at as part of this, Frank.
Yeah.
John, if I can just mention as well that there is a mobility management plan to be done for Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch. That mobility management plan will also, I suppose, look at traffic management options around the bridge. So hopefully we'll be getting some kind of an idea as to what the best solutions would be for the bridge in the near future.
Okay. So the bridge and the access and the linkage to areas. Other areas addressed for housing, obviously quite significant housing development over the next 6 years. It's envisaged somewhere in the region of 120 housing units to be built. Not sure if anyone has any questions or observations in relation to that.
Sorry, John, Walter Connolly has his hand raised.
Walter, yeah, okay.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just involved with the Tinnahinch development with the residents. Now, I missed the beginning of your presentation there because I had problems logging on with these different systems, but it took me half an hour to get it started. So I missed some of it. Now, I can't see, I could hear everything, but I couldn't see the slides or any of those. So just number one, will they be, say in the local libraries or somewhere that they can be viewed? That's just one question. Another one is, we sent in our presentation, if you like, or our recommendations, or what we were asked for there in last November. And where I listened to some of your presenters there saying that to get in your present, get in your thing for the different areas, do we have to resubmit these again, or are they still there? And the other thing then is in connection with the Barrow Line, this Blue Way or Green Way, whatever was going on there a few years ago, is that dead now in the water, or what's the state of play there? Anybody who's trying to walk the river bank at the moment, they'll find if you're going from the Tinnahinch side up to Clash, you won't get too far. And the same going down the river towards St. Mullins, you'll get down to a certain end, and at this time of the year it's impassable. So just wondering if that project as well is also gone.
Okay, so there's a number of questions there, Walter, as I hear them. Number one is about getting copies and whether you can go into the library, etc. As I understand it, the libraries are closed at the moment, and visits to public offices are also curtailed. So I think the options would be in relation to viewing the plans and the documents online, or else having documents sent out to you. I don't know, and Nicholas and Anita, maybe you guys can tell me what the situation is in relation to availability of printouts and sending out plans to people and so on.
Yeah, I suppose, John, we can make the presentations available online for people if they want to access online, or if anybody hasn't got access to it, will be printed off and email it or post it out to people. So we will facilitate people in whatever way that we. I suppose just a couple of things. The Walter Rim, Tinnahinch. Just turn off my camera here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Well, it's gone a bit glitchy. The camera might help, yeah.
Yeah. I suppose in terms of Tinnahinch, Walter, the submissions that were made previously, we incorporated proposals from that into the Tinnahinch plan. I'm not sure if you had an opportunity to have a look at it, just to see that you're happy that we've covered the issues raised. I suppose the project came in back in 2018, and it went through the planning process at that stage, and it went through on Bord Pleanála. Now, it was refused permission primarily because of the impacts on the special area conservation. So that project, as it was presented at that time, wasn't successful in planning. So there's no current in relation to developing a Blue Way surface, if you like, along the Barrow Way. Now, I know Waterways Ireland are looking at other options in terms of the river, and I suppose the whole walking areas and sports facilities and use of the water in terms of, I suppose, maximising assets there. So while the plan application that was presented in 2018 wasn't successful, they are looking at other alternatives. Okay,
thanks very much, Anita. Walter, I don't know if that answers your question. Just in relation to the timeline, I know you didn't get it at the start. You won't be surprised to hear that the delay, that there was a meeting held, I think it was October 2019, but the delay in further events was due to the COVID situation. So the process was interrupted, but is continuing on. I don't think any aspects of it have been actually parked or set back and so on. So it's all part of the one continuous process. Perhaps Nicholas or Anita, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Naomi, I think there was someone else with their hand up.
Yes, Francis Logan. Yeah, I agree with Walter's ideas about the line, as the local call it. I've been walking to St. Mullins a number of times, and on one occasion there was heavy rain, and just underneath it was all muddy. And you think, well, I'm not going to do this again. And then it's also stopping people who are in, wheelchairs with special needs or whatever, and mothers with prams, the way it is. And really, it needs a hard surface. And I don't really see how it would impact on the environment too much, because there's the adjoining fields and there's wildlife, and there's also wildlife in the bank right beside the river. So, I think it really needs to be reviewed.
Thank you very much, Francis.
Yeah,
Anisha,
okay.
I don't know if you wish to say anything on that, but as I understand it from your previous answer, the previous application or planning permission was rejected, and currently there are no other plans.
Yeah, but you see, I mean, it's coming, it's in Kildare and it's in Carlow, and then it comes to a full stop. It's kind of ridiculous, really, you know.
Okay. Anyone from the councils like to comment on that? I don't think there's much beyond what Anita has said, Francis.
Okay, yeah, okay, thanks. But I think it's a shame, really, you know. I think there was a bit of a campaign, you know, as well, and maybe well-intentioned, but I don't think it was a good idea.
Okay, well, that's the system we're dealing with.
I know.
Currently. Anyone else? Naomi, if anyone else has... remember, you can ask a question using the comment box if you wish.
No hands raised at the minute, anyway, John.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. We've Councillor William Quinn and Brian Hamilton, whichever one would like to go first.
Willie?
Sorry, Councillor Willie, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Waterways Ireland are coming before Carlow County Council, I think in about 3 weeks' time, by video link to answer some questions regarding the barrage track and the maintenance of it. So if there's any questions that need to be asked, I can ask about that if people pass them on to me. And the other question there was asked earlier on, there will be a new surface going from the centre of the bridge on the Carlow side out to Boris Road there, either May or June of next year.
Okay, Willie, thanks very much. Francis, is that any reassurance to you?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't quite understand what he's saying. There's a new surface going. I didn't. Sorry. Sorry to ask you to repeat it.
Yeah, no, it's just a question earlier was asked there about the surface on the bridge. There's a new tarmac surface going from the Carlow side of the bridge out to Boris Road of next year. So that'll sort out that problem as regards the bridge end of it. But Waterways Ireland are coming before Carlow County Council for a meeting by video link in about 3 weeks' time.
So is the new surface, Willie, is going on the road rather than along the riverbank?
Yeah.
It's going on the road, yeah. But the question was asked earlier, John, about the surface on the bridge. That
right,
some rough surface on it. That was just answer that question.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Naomi, you had one other?
Brian Hamilton, if you'd like to speak, you're just on mute at the moment.
Hey, you can hear me now? You can
hear
me? Excellent. Yeah, Brian Hamilton, I'm a member of the PPN1 in Kilkenny County Council, and we've been doing Zoom meetings. But in 2019, I bought a very nice motorhome. And I was hoping to get to use it last year, and then suddenly COVID happened. So I'm delighted to hear that Martin O'Brien of the Barry Valley Group has started a camper van location down there in the hub in Graiguenamanagh. I think this is a well necessary aspect to our tourism development here in Kilkenny. My first visit to Graiguenamanagh, in fact, was in 1970 at a canoe race from Graiguenamanagh to St. Mullins. And at that time, there was very few boats on the river, pleasure boats. But now I see there's at least 40 or 50 pleasure boats locate there in the summer, and they are a boom to the tourism in Graiguenamanagh. Too long, unfortunately, we've associated camper vans or motorhomes we haven't catered for them in Ireland in terms of tourism. But I guarantee you, in the next couple of years, we are going to see an absolute influx of people from the UK as discovering Ireland and the joys of going around Ireland in a motorhome or a camper van. Now, the difference between a camper van and a motorhome is that in a camper van, you are camping and you need extra facilities in your camping stops. In a motorhome, you are literally taking your home with you. You've got all the facilities on it. And so a motorhome is a very, very environmentally good way of attracting tourists to any country. And I just, before I go, I don't know if you can see this. It's a wonderful new book which has just come out by Martin Jory.
I think your camera might be off, Brian.
Sorry, I'll put my camera on. Sorry. There you go. And it's called Take the Slow Road to Ireland, Inspirational Journeys Around Ireland by Campervan and Motorhome. Now, he documents numerous journeys, but there are very few journeys in the Midlands in Ireland, and none in Kilkenny or Tipperary or Laois, etc. And I think it's very, very important that we attract a slice of this very, very important tourism market. Just as the River Barrow attracted German tourists 40 years ago by boating, who initially were among the first people to discover the joys of boating on the River Barrow. So I think I'd urge you, and it's not because I have a motorhome, I hope to go to their countries and in my motorhome, but we should be looking at the kind of facilities that they have on the continent to facilitate motorhomes. And I think that in terms of COVID now, it's a marvelous way for experiencing in a very safe way for elderly people who might be fear of catching infection. Motorhomes are the way to go.
Okay, Brian.
That's my contribution to it, and I hope it's been a marvelous presentation, and congratulations to all involved.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Brian. We're nearly as good as the Late Late Show now with the plugs for books. I can't believe it. This is really fantastic. Is that book for sale anywhere, Brian? Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch is asking. I'm sure his. Could you just give us the name again? It's called
on Bookfinder. It's there you go. Martin Dory is the guy.
Martin Dory, D-O-R-E-Y.
Full of wonderful journeys in Ireland, and I hope the next edition will also have Kilkenny featured in it.
Okay, great. That's very good. I've shameless plug, seeing as we're plugging books. I'm interviewing the chairman of Kilkenny Tourism on my business show on Saturday morning, the newly elected chairman. So I will actually ask him about campervan tourism. Okay, anyone else like to make any comments? Or
Councillor Tom Kinsella.
Councillor, how are you? I don't think I name checked you at the start, so apologies for that.
Yeah, well, I have to give my apologies. I was called away. I had to co-assist in the calving of a cow, so I've missed some of this presentation. But I just came in on the end part there. But there's one aspect that may have been covered, but it's just along the Barrow track. There's so many different inland waterways, parks and wildlife. It's practically impossible to do anything along the Barrow line. Now, maybe it has been covered, but I know from Carlow, and even farmers themselves wanted to make improvements, but it has to be appropriate assessments on. And even in St. Mullins, for the first kilometre down to the first lock, you don't want to be an amphibian to travel. So I'm wondering, is there anything in this plan that we could get the knockhead together that we won't be going all over the place, and when something has to be done, we know where to go to and we can consult with. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. I don't know who would be the appropriate person to address Councillor Kinsella's observation, but I think if I'm correct, it basically involves working together to drive the area forward. Tommy, is that correct?
Yes, because I think if any of the area engineers, anyone like that, any work that needs to be done, we actually wanted there's a first kilometre to the first lock in St. Mullins, and an awful lot of representation from it. And I think Waterways Ireland said they weren't allowed to hang in it because what put in it, there might be a residue runoff and it would affect the fisheries. The Parks and Wildlife told them that. Like, so it's I don't know if anyone that walks it, you nearly get lost down there now. But there's something that could be done, that when there's something work like that to be done, that all the bodies could come together and have joined up thinking is really what I'm talking about.
Okay. That's an ongoing issue, I suppose. One issue that has come up is about the availability of broadband being covered. Apologies for the difficulty, had difficulties joining. Those things probably not unrelated. From my perspective, from my understanding, and I stand to be corrected by any of the people from the respective councils, but I don't think that broadband is covered in this particular plan, unless in relation to the industrial and commercial development where it would have an impact. I know that there's a national broadband plan and so on, but I'm not 100% sure, Nicholas, whether you'd like to address that, or Anita.
John, yes, I suppose broadband, the provision of broadband, the council has some function in the coordination of it. It's a private sector function, apart from the fact that the national broadband plan is being rolled out as well. So we in the Kilkenny County Plan support the rollout of broadband throughout the county, and that includes Graiguenamanagh. The plan, I think, does have regard to the rollout, and it will support it wherever possible. We have a broadband officer in the council who's dealing with the rollout at present, and even if it's not specifically mentioned, it's not something that the plan can necessarily affect apart from support it. And therefore, but we know the national broadband plan being rolled out. As far as I know, Graiguenamanagh is part of that. It is being covered. So yeah, so it is in the offing, but it is something that people might consider and make a submission on. And we would be glad to consider it.
Thanks very much, Nicholas. There was also a question in about the email address for the flood relief scheme, and thanks to Emer getting back. It's gtfrs@burnlooby.com. Okay. Anyone else? Any questions? Naomi, did you spot anyone else?
Philip has his hand up there.
Philip, if you want to give us your contribution.
You're currently on mute at the moment, Philip.
Now, you got me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can hear you, Philip.
Yeah, I just have one question there or two there. In relation to the Graiguenamanagh side on the quay, just about 10 feet in, there's a big pipe there with some stuff flowing out into the river. Could someone answer what that is? And on the second thing, right outside the old bakehouse on the Tinnahinch side, once every 5 weeks, the sewage truck has to empty the tanks there. And in relation to the lockhouse, is that going to be used for anything? It's a crying shame that it's just boarded up, like all the lockhouses on the riverbank in Ireland. And there's a little bridge just past the first lock there. I was talking to a gentleman from the Board of Works, and he said that the engineer from the Board of Works said that the bridge was fine. Now, that bridge is actually collapsed into the river. So there are just a few points I'd like to know. And surely between Carlow and Kilkenny, when everyone's gone on about the beautiful bridge we have, it's a disgrace the way the bridge is left. An absolute disgrace. It's actually, if anyone there, it's bursting, it's the structure itself from the weeds that are growing in there for the last 60, 70 years. 1982 was the last time that bridge was cleaned by a gentleman who's passed since. It has never been cleaned since. Now, it can be done professionally, or maybe someone there can come back, some of the engineers, or it's just going to be left like that and never cleaned. There are just a few points.
Okay,
someone could answer some of them for me, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know who to direct that at. Is it Nicholas or is it you, Frank?
With just respect to
the pipe and the sewage truck in the first instance.
Well, there's one pipe from on the Graiguenamanagh.
Yeah, we heard that.
Into the river.
Yeah.
And the other one is on Tinnahinch, and that's been emptied.
Yeah. Okay. Frank.
Well, just in relation to the lockhouse, I suppose that's the question I could answer really, John. The plans would be that would be developed into some facility, either community or commercial. Waterways Ireland have identified that as one of the sites that they would be looking to develop, along with how we could add it to Tinnahinch Castle and the dry dock. So that's all part of the, I suppose, the river vision plan that we have in creating a kind of a destination to the riverbank area, south or say downstream of the bridge.
Okay. Just in relation to the issues about the pipe, which is on the Kenny side, as far as I understand,
on the quay there,
and the sewage truck, which you're saying is emptied every 5 weeks.
Every 5 6 weeks. That's
on the Carlow side. I don't know, Anita, can you shed any light on that, or is it something that?
I suppose, John, that's within the remit of Irish Water now in terms of water and wastewater infrastructure. It's not under the remit of the local authority. It's something that we can bring up with Irish Water in terms of a query that's been raised here in this forum.
Okay.
So certainly we can follow up on that.
Nicholas, can I just ask then about the bridge? I think what you were saying was that would be considered as part of a traffic plan or mobility plan?
I suppose traffic management issues on the bridge. Now, the cleaning of the bridge is, I suppose, a separate issue. It's something we can consider, and I suppose our area engineer might look at that, or the two area engineers from Carlow and Kilkenny might look at that particular issue. It's not.
And can you relay those concerns that Philip raised to the area engineer? Sorry, did you get that?
Sorry, John, no, you broke up.
Oh, sorry. Can you relay those concerns to the area engineer?
We'll do so. Yes, we'll do so.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Jerry Crowley here. I am the area engineer on the Carlow side.
Jerry, how are you?
I'll take up Philip's concerns there and look into that, and I can get back to him.
Okay, thanks very much, Jerry. Okay, Philip, are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's grand, John. Thanks.
Thanks a million. Okay. Anyone else?
Well, John, Councillor Michael Doyle here.
Councillor Michael Doyle, how are you? Councillor.
Not too bad, John, and thanks everyone for the presentation. It's just in relation to housing, John. I suppose there's a water capacity issue there. It's an Irish Water issue, and I was just wondering, where are we in consultation with Irish Water on getting a planned upgrade to that? Because there's going to be a huge problem there in relation to building of houses and meeting any sort of targets if that upgrade is not complete. As far as I know, currently, I don't think any new houses can be connected to the system due to the water capacity issue. So just wondering where we are in talking to Irish Water in relation to that. Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks very much. Who's the person? Nicholas, is that you?
Yeah.
2026 in about 120 houses. About 100 of them on the Kilkenny side, Anita, about 20 on the Carlow side. I don't know what's the status of play with Irish Water.
Yes. No, our understanding is that Irish Water won't take over any infrastructure that's provided privately. However, the council has taken a decision that we will allow in certain instances that developers provide water but not wastewater. I think the wastewater capacity is not an issue in Graiguenamanagh. It's just the water, and it's seasonal. So it's just during the summer months the water table is a bit low, and I understand that they have recently bored a well. The water quality wasn't up to standard. So it is not only an issue of water provision, it's also an issue of water quality. So if a developer comes in with a proposal to drill their own well as a backup, then they must be able to find sufficient water quality. So it is something that Irish Water is aware of. I understand it's not in their capital projects for up to 2024, but it might be after 2024, which is well within the lifespan of this plan, because this plan will go on to 2027. So it might be that during the lifetime of this plan, they might have some funding available, but that's not confirmed yet because their capital projects for 2024 has not been agreed yet. But there might be some temporary relief, provided that the water quality can be achieved.
Michael, is that any comfort to you?
Yeah, it's at least we've put in a provision, I suppose, to allow the development of houses for with individual water supply. But I suppose there would be a concern in all towns and villages about the lack of housing, and it would be a concern in Graiguenamanagh as well that currently our targets will have to be done probably through a private scheme more so than getting into that water system, which is currently at capacity, which that's a concern for me. But thanks very much, Nicholas, and thanks, John.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Okay, Naomi.
Sorry, John. Councillor Deirdre Cullen has her hand
Councillor
raised.
Cullen, how are you? Thanks for coming along. Over to you.
Good, and thank you especially to all the speakers, to yourself, John, as well. Just a question, maybe it would be for Frank, perhaps. You know, in terms of the encouragement, obviously, of increased tourism into the area in general, you know, Graiguenamanagh Tinnahinch and surroundings, what is the forward planning regarding public transportation infrastructure into and out of Graiguenamanagh? You know, linking up, I suppose, with the likes of, you know, Thomastown, Kilkenny, and into Carlow itself. What's in the plan regarding such? Because that would be very important in terms of increased footfall into Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch itself. Can you elaborate on that for me, if you can, Frank or Nicholas?
Yeah, okay. Deirdre, yeah, I suppose the plan, identifies that there should be a linkage, you know, with the other, say, attractions within the area, such as Woodstock, Jerpoint Abbey. And maybe that would be, it should be packaged maybe as a kind of a region within the southeast of Kilkenny, and maybe for day trippers or whatever coming from Kilkenny. But it doesn't specifically go into how the people would get here in terms of public transport. I suppose like Graiguenamanagh is serviced by the regional road network predominantly. And I suppose one thing that did come up in the plan is that whilst it's not serviced by a national road or a motorway, I suppose that's part of the attraction to it. It's off the beaten track. And if people are coming here, that could be one of the pluses, that they have to use the regional road network to get here. I mean, there is a limited public transport, I suppose, provision within the town at the moment. But I suppose if the demand was there and I suppose there was an economic benefit that could be derived from providing such a service, I'm sure private operators would look at it.
Deirdre, if I can just mention that the NTA, National Transport Authority, currently has an initiative. It's still in its infancy, and they're doing an assessment at the moment to look at rural links and to provide bus services between Kilkenny and some of the the bigger towns in Kilkenny County. So there may be some I suppose services coming out of that scheme. There seems to be funding available for it, but it's still in its infancy, and they're still doing an assessment of the need of certain links and connections.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking around. I can't see any more hands raised. Anyone else?
Seems to be good.
Okay, folks.
Can you hear me, John?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Who's that?
Councillor Willie Quinn here.
Oh, Willie, how are you?
Yeah, regarding the transport there, John, I know that there's an application gone into Transport Authority as regards a daily bus service that would come from New Ross via Graiguenamanagh into Tinnahinch on that way into Borris and on to Carlow. That would happen maybe 2 or 3 times a day. So that's in the process at the moment. I think there was one application or something ahead of us. It's done through the Ringalink services. Jackie Mealy there in charge of the Ringalink. Jackie has been pursuing this for the last couple of years for her. So I think the one up in Wicklow got the last batch of funding that was there for her. So I think we're very close to the next one. So that's what we're being told anyway.
Okay. Well, best of luck with that. God, it sounds so exotic being able to get on a bus and go through all those places and go and sit in the riverbank and have a cup of coffee. Roll on, that's what I say. Okay, I have to say this has been a very refreshing meeting because I haven't heard anybody hardly mention the C word at all, which is COVID, obviously. So it's good to be talking about the future. Just a reminder that this process is ongoing, and this meeting this evening is just one part of it. There will be a further report produced. I'd like to thank everybody for their participation, for your attention, and for your good behaviour. This has worked out an awful lot better than I had thought. Isn't technology wonderful 5 years ago when Storm Frank was ravaging Graiguenamanagh. If you had told us that you'd have almost 50 people sitting around in their individual living rooms looking into their computers and talking to each other, you would have been kind of written off as being some sort of science fiction nerd or something like that. So that was only 5 years ago. Look at the way we're doing business now, and I suppose when we're talking about this plan, which goes up until 2026, who's to tell what we'll be doing? Maybe we'll be doing the Mr. Spock, beam ourselves up down to the hub down in Graiguenamanagh. But look, thanks to everyone. I don't know if anyone from the councils, if you, Nicholas, or Anita, or Emer, or Frank would like to say anything in conclusion.
Yes, John, thank you. Just to encourage people to make submissions, the plan is available on consult.kilkenny.ie, and I think it's on consult.carlow.ie. So you can make submissions there, or you can email it. I suppose we can make the presentation tonight available. I think if anybody wants to send an email to ourplan@kilkennycoco.ie, that's ourplan@kilkennycoco.ie, we will then forward you the presentation for the evening, and maybe all three presentations. I will make sure of that. And then there's 2 weeks left on the consultation period for the draft plan. So if people can make submissions then online, that'll be appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, folks. I think that about wraps us up. Anita, do you want to say anything? No.
No, to everybody for making the time to thank everybody for making the time to come online this evening, and as Nicholas said, just to encourage to make submissions. Thank you.
Okay, folks, thanks very much, and thanks for your patience with the technology. I can see myself fading in and out here at times as well, but we got through it. So thanks to everybody. I'd like to thank all the presenters, Nicholas Lowe, I hope I got that right, Anita Sweeney, Emer Slattery, and Frank Stafford. Also, Naomi Scully, who's back there in mission control. Thanks, Naomi. Thanks to all you for coming along, and just to encourage you all to continue to participate in the process and make your presence felt and your ideas, keep your ideas out there and keep arguing for the good of Graiguenamanagh and Tinnahinch. And just finally, just to wish you all well on behalf of both councils in these difficult times, and keep safe, keep socially distanced, and keep following the rules. But with that, thanks everybody for joining us, and good night. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.